Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to Street and Team Wise Soccer with Trauma Wise Coaching. This is Block 2, Part 1, where we're going to be talking a lot about empowering on the field, both at practice and in the games. All right, and just for review, the main things that we are looking at is as coaches, we are trying to embody secure attachment and demonstrate that to the kids as a good way to heal what they might be coming into and then also not causing harm in the coaching interaction. And then the next thing, though, is to balance that with structure and nurture. And balancing structure is the rules, the supervision, the tactics that come with soccer, with a good heavy dose of nurture, which is probably a little bit different than most coaching curriculums pay attention to. So just as you recall in block 1, we talked about starting with the coach and keeping our own lids down so that we know how to prevent and deal with kids when their lids flip. And then block 2, we're talking about prevention and using empowering strategies and understanding healthy boundaries. And block 2 will build into block 3. In terms of block 3 is when we go over how to handle when things begin to break down. So remember, these are all connected. And then we will end with this capstone in person session where we talk about engagement strategies that you'll hear about today. And just remember, as review, attachment is that core operating code that we all learn, honestly, from about the third trimester to about 18 months is when it gets solidified. And it is how, with secure attachment, we know as coaches how to set clear boundaries, which then communicates to kids that they are in a safe space and that if you have an insecure attachment style, that attachment style can be rewritten and you can learn secure attachment moving forward. And so the other thing that is running in the background is we are trying to teach kids how to have healthy relationship skills, which of course is required on a team setting. And that means, again, we are looking for opportunities to encourage them to give care and encouragement, to receive it without blowing it off, to be safe in who they are, and that is decrease the effects of shame that can be setting in, and then teach them to negotiate for needs without harm to self or others. And you'll see today that we talk about encouraging feedback and speaking up. And so, what we're trying to encourage are those pillars of connection and self regulation. And then one thing we talked about as we are trying to embody the secure attachment and balance structure and nurture, that we are expected as coaches to give them healthy challenge. And that is, we point out the things that they can grow into. But given all of the things that may be in their invisible backpack, they may hear fear, shame, and guilt when we're even talking about those things. But what sets things apart in a safe environment is that we're providing nurture and empowerment strategies and safety on purpose to help them overcome any of those invisible backpack issues. And this is in distinction to an abusive situation where they may get extra fear, shame, and guilt from coaches applying tactics that are not helpful. And that just leads to a sense of hopelessness and not a sense that they can do anything on their own. So we're obviously trying to favor an environment of healthy challenge. And so today we are going over what we can use as tools for making sure that we tip the scales more towards healthy challenge rather than a toxic situation. And so we're going to call these engagement strategies. And the first set lies in the coach behavior. And so we've talked a lot about it already, and that is the coach's voice. And so this is one of the best ways or worst ways to communicate coach dysregulation. And if we are unhappy with how a game is going, doing it in too harsh a way. But what we're going to be talking about, and again, like I said, we will be going over these in the in-person experience, is that we need to develop two types of voice, and to be aware of them is the helpful piece. And the first is the structured coach voice, and that communicates structure. I'm here to give you tactics and teach you, and I'm watching what happens. And so, what this is communicating to the kids is that you are the boss and that they know you know, that you're paying attention to what's going on. But then also there is a nurturing voice that that communicates, I am safe and I am here to help. Now, other things that we can use are healthy touch, even fist bumps and high fives, pats on the shoulder, used appropriately. These really communicate that you're present with the kids and it is a safe touch, which, even at the level of fist bumps when they get something right or when you're greeting them, is super healthy. And it really helps communicate connection that we need as an engagement strategy. And so next is just playfulness. Showing up and being in a playful circumstance really helps communicate safety on so many different levels. And what mirroring is if the kids are excited, you approach them with their excitement. Or if they're a little bit down, you approach them from that energy level as well. It's a way to kind of communicate that you're in sync with the kids. And again, is another very powerful engagement strategy. And so eye contact is another one. But remember, this one you have to kind of practice as well. And either ask people that are close to you or look in a mirror about when you are coaching, you might have eye contact that seems scary rather than nurturing. So just make sure to match, especially the nurturing voice with nurturing eye contact. And then next is to really lean into the idea of curiosity. And if you see a kid that's struggling, lean in with how they think things are going and start a conversation that way. Because they may be aware of much more than you think, but they may be struggling with something that you're not sure of. But listening to them is a really, really important part of this. And then this idea of scaffolding comes next. And what this is, think about a toddler that's walking or almost walking, and you give them your fingers for just a second, and then they're able to walk a little bit, and then finally they let go. So we're doing this in lots of different ways for the kids that we're coaching. So we're trying to nudge them in a growth direction, but we might point out, hey, I need you to be able to do this skill a little bit better, but I am here to help you, whether that's to demonstrate or to give them videos or some other way to encourage them to find ways to move in that growth direction. And just one thing that I want to say is that we are all going to have strengths and weaknesses. Some of these are going to come a lot more naturally to some versus others. But having a general understanding of the different strategies that we can use is what I'm trying to kind of raise in this module. And now there's actually a lot of science behind creating places where healing and growth can happen for kids. And so we're going to review those strategies, and they're in blue. And then as I go through even what's taught at the US soccer level, you're going to see how much science goes behind what we can do in a practice. And so to call these out, there's rituals, there's artifacts like cones and balls, there's flows, general ways that the practice and game will flow. Transitions are something to pay attention to. Completions are another. When they get a skill or complete a task, it's actually very motivating. And so then timings, making sure that we're having a sense of the right timing when we're, say, giving feedback. Touch points, where we kind of dig deep into a certain circumstance. creating settings that are conducive. Emotional climates are big. And then we just went over scaffolding as well. So I'm going to go through these as if we are preparing for practice. And I just want to call your attention to all of the opportunities that we have. So when we're preparing for practice, we can organize a plan that follows a structure week over week. And that is certain rituals that the kids can expect. Because if they're walking into a different practice structure every week, it's confusing and is going to be dysregulating. And for us, we use the modified game form of progression and then play. I like to think of it sometimes as play, practice, play. But when you have the equipment out, those are the artifacts that help support this ritual every week. And then spend some time specifically planning the transitions from drill to drill, because again, kids can dysregulate if they're waiting too much. And so, what that generally means is have the pennies, water, and snack breaks planned out. And then also, you can arrange cones so that the field can change with not much change in the cones themselves. And then we're going to spend a lot of time on this in the next session, but planning the scripts. So these are 1 to 3 word phrases that describe different ideas, both with team behavior and also the soccer management of skills and team concepts. So we're going to talk about that a lot at the next session. And then try to show up early to lay out the cones because this allows you to properly greet the team, which also helps with rituals and touch points for the kids. Okay, so the next circumstance is the kids are arriving for practice or games. And so the point of this slide is realizing there's a lot of stuff that could be going on that we are not necessarily in control of. But if we're aware of, we can be curious and even pick up on things that are happening. And so this is why might the kids not be at their best? And there can be multiple things, sensory issues. This is a really huge concept, but in this case, I just want to say that kids are built certain ways and they see the world certain ways through certain glasses. And we may need to adjust sometimes to what they're seeing, at least to be able to connect with them and keep them safe. And then next is the amount of water that they have. And then what's their blood sugar level and nutrition? How much sleep have they gotten? And then they do have a diet of needing healthy touch. And that's why including fist bumps and that kind of thing is actually pretty helpful and pretty easy to do for kids. And then if something has gone on at school, that's another thing that might be causing them to dysregulate a little bit or be very happy. And then friends and family, things could have happened at that level that may be dysregulating them as well. And then the things that we can control is are they really enjoying practice? Is practice a fun, safe place for them to be? Or is it run in an unfair, not fun way where the kids are allowed to be very mean? So again, this is why we're doing these modules to make sure that we can make practice as fun and enjoyable, safe, and growth oriented as possible so that it provides them that safe space. So then, when we're managing practice, as they arrive, we can always greet them, in which we can communicate several versions of I see you, I'm glad you're here, how are you doing? And this adds to our ability to set up rituals and transitions. And then when we want to build an emotional climate, and I really like the idea of committing 1,000 mistakes before getting it right. So that really de escalates or de emphasizes when we make mistakes. And it's just something we have to remind the kids a lot. Basic expectations that I love to set with kids are work hard, listen well, have fun, and speak up with respect. And again, this empowers them to be part of the equation and not just receiving coaching all the time. And then next is timing of feedback. And this takes advantage of that concept of touch points. So in the flow is probably the most used used way, we only want to pause them minimally because that can be very intrusive to what's going on. And maybe and do that in a natural way, like if they've been playing for 10 minutes and they need a quick break. And then in transition between drills, understanding both the concept and the team concepts. And then you can pull kids aside one on one to give them quick encouragement and coaching as you need to. And then acknowledge the need that kids have to complete something. And so I will often gamify drills where I put one group with the other, and one has to complete a task, say 25 times. And so one group may get there, but then really allow the other team to get there as well to get the full piece. But also completing a task and acknowledging that is really important. And so, approaching drills like a puzzle, this helps with the mental empowerment for kids. We don't, it's okay to hold back the main reason for the drill and actually have them figure out the main point of the drill. You'll find some unexpected wisdom there. And also, it gives you some great feedback on the drill that you're using. And then finally, in practice, it is important to recreate the game chaos. And sometimes we need to make the field smaller to increase the need to be careful but work at high speed because we are practicing for a chaotic game situation. So we don't want to be overly safe in the practice scenario. But what is important is that if mistakes are made in this game chaos setting, that we respond in a safe, empowering way so that they know in a game, if something happens, that they can rely on you to have their back. And so when it comes to managing the game, there's a couple of things that we think about. And that is, again, check your game voice because that helps you set the emotional climate for the kids. You can be loud, of course, but listen to the emotional side of the voice, making sure it's empowering and at least supervising. Hey, I'm watching what's going on and I'm with you guys is a great way to say, this is what I'm communicating with my game voice. And then really come up with a nice pregame ritual. I like if I could suggest, I really like having them show up and then starting a basic keep away in a small field, and then moving into knee prevention warm ups, and then finally a 2v3 um, uh, defense attack drill with the goalkeeper, just because it's a game situation. It requires both defense, offense, and the goalkeepers to be there. Allow the goalkeepers to warm up on time, some warm up time as well. And then we go over positions, playing time expectations, making them as fair as possible. And then what's the strategy focus point or what's the skill from practice that we're working on in the game this week? Of course, we're coaching in the flow for the game. And then the post game discussion provides another touch point for emotional climate. And then coach feedback, but also player feedback, again, is very empowering. They may know exactly what they needed to work on in that game. And so if it comes from them, it's going to be a lot easy, a lot more effective than the Captain Obvious coaching of you guys really, struggled here. So involving them in that discussion is super important. And so, again, just to bring us back to what our main focus for these modules is to embody the secure attachment and balancing structure and nurture. And so today we went over a lot of empowerment strategies and reminding ourselves of the tools that we have as we're managing practice. And the next time we're going to get much more into setting healthy boundaries and using scripts, which will help us respond to dysregulation when it occurs. So you can see these are all tied together. So again, look forward to seeing you in the next video.